Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox and welcome to another live stream. So today I'm going to be talking about and reading to you an article that I have written for fulcrumpolitics.com, which is a organization unique to my state that supports third parties and third party voting so that we can escape our corporate duopoly. Now, what they're doing is they're going to start taking left and right perspectives that fall out of the Republican-Democratic divide, people who support third parties talking about issues that are important in the news or in our society right now. The first of these is going to be a left and right look at what should be done in the wake of Minnesota protests, and I have been chosen to provide the leftist analysis for this. So that's what I'm going to be reading for you today. I'll let you guys know when that goes live so that you can read both perspectives. I think even the right perspective is going to be interesting because, again, it falls outside of the typical Republican knee-jerk reactions, and it is a fellow third-party supporter, so that might be interesting. It might be worth a watch, worth a read. Answering the question of why protests are happening in Minnesota is easy. The police keep killing unarmed people of color in the streets for little or nothing. George Floyd's killer, Derek Chauvin, was himself involved in a total of at least 7 shootings and murders in his career, with an additional 12 citations for excessive force. And he's not alone. Several other officers were directly involved in these 7 incidents. One of the 4 officers involved in Floyd's arrest had a similar record. Our method of policing has failed. In places like Minnesota, they teach officers based on a program called warrior training, which teaches them to be hypervigilant and aggressive, perceiving any threat as a threat on their life. When mixed even with a little prejudice about people of color, this is a death sentence for over-policed minority communities. So, training like this must be stopped. Instead, our police must be integrated parts of the community. Not warriors or soldiers fighting crime, but dedicated civil servants. Imagine the Andy Griffith Show. Officers should ask themselves, what would Sheriff Taylor do? But reforming the police isn't enough. For now, it seems like there's a potentially racially motivated killer behind a badge on every street corner, everywhere we look. Why is that? Our criminal justice system as a whole has failed, too. In the 1980s and 1990s, we adopted measures to make our justice system more punitive in ways that have not benefited society. The scared straight model has failed. Recidivism is increasing even as overall crime stops. If harsher punishments curbed crime, more and more people wouldn't become repeat offenders while overall crime drops. We have to reform the criminal justice system as a whole. We must remove the profit motive from the criminal justice system. Private prisons, prison labor at slave wages, and mandatory minimums that have not benefited society, they have only profited those whose incomes are derived from the number of people in prison for longer and longer periods of time. We should focus on a really rehabilitative model like what we see in many Northern European countries. Finally, we must reform the economic situations that lead to crime in the first place. By reducing the feeling of alienation, we reduce a person's willingness to turn to a life of crime. We need to give teens free access to public college and trade schools, to give them opportunities that are more gainful than a life of crime. We need to change the relationship between a person's life and employment to maximize satisfaction and reduce alienation and exploitation. To do this, at first, I would suggest a modest basic income guarantee and a government jobs guarantee. This country needs a lot of work done, and we have the money printing authority to pay satisfactory wages to do it. Instead of forging bills as George Floyd allegedly did, you could turn to the government for honest work, turning the America of the 20th century that still exists around us into the America of the 21st. And a basic income guarantee would allow people to pursue lives with meaning, start small businesses without much fear of losing their home or ability to feed themselves and family. Plus, this basic income provided without the requirement of work would force employers to pay decent wages to workers who did choose employment in the private sector. Because why would you work for a wage that's no better than staying at home to do what you love or to raise your family? By trading alienation for satisfaction, we would greatly reduce crime. and this would radically change the job of the police into something that wouldn't need to be so violent, but something that could really uplift their community. We could have a future where you're happy to see the police at your door because they're there to help you, not to hurt you, and certainly not to kill you. The larger problem is we find ourselves in a system where both sides seem to support the status quo I'm talking about changing, or want to change it in the opposite direction. The party most likely to support my economic ideas is running the architect of the crime bill that I said that we need to move away from for president. And the party running the candidate with a better history on criminal justice reform would be utterly opposed to my economic ideas. We have a situation where a complete answer cannot be found on either side, so we need new ideas. But even inside of the current two-party system, these ideas stand to be drowned out by the corporatist establishment. But with a viable third party, we could see ideas like this come to pass. Instead of remaining constantly deadlocked, we could work on this idea by forming coalitions with Republicans or Democrats in service of forming a majority in favor of real change. As we implement our ideas, and this world I imagine comes to pass, we may see the two parties we now have either wither away or change their outdated ideas as they're finally and effectively challenged. That's my pitch for running for president, y'all. But seriously, I am actually considering running for local office because I think that people with more left ideas need to be breaking into local office. That is fundamentally important for us. It's really hard to start getting people on board with ideas on the left, which are radical from an American perspective, and the American Overton window, which is center to hard right almost exclusively. We have to start showing them in their communities that leftist ideas can work. And to achieve that, if we're going to do this from an electoral standpoint, we have to start doing that by holding local office. We can't just run for president. Although, in a time like right now, when you have two completely horrible options for somewhat different but oftentimes the same reasons, now is a good time to encourage the growth of a third party that can compete in presidential elections as well. Now, a lot of people talk about the spoiler vote, but I have a lot of friends who are just invested in an idea of not voting and not supporting the status quo at all. So you're not really spoiling anything if you, instead of not voting, decide to vote for a third party. If anything, you are strengthening our power in presidential electoral politics. And while that may not be ultimately the best solution, maybe there is a broader way that we need to be acting, you can't deny that that would certainly help. I'm Jackie Fox, and my content will always be ad-free because I'm eschewing corporate donations to the channel. I just ask that if you can donate a little bit of money on Patreon like these fine, foxy folks, or if you want to make a one-time donation, you can donate on Ko-fi. If you're looking for another way to support the channel, I'm also making Fox hats with my logo on them. They are currently in the design phase, and I'm willing to allow people to ask for customized hats. Prices may vary depending on the cost of labor to manufacture them, because I want to make sure that my workers are paid fairly. But I am happy to say that the next few months, if you're a patron who has donated to this channel, I will be counting all of your donations against the cost of your first Fox hat, allowing you to get it at a discount.